Is my shepherd, I shall not want. How many of you have heard those words before? It's a trick question. You all just heard it like 30 seconds ago. Those are some of the most famous words in the entire Bible. Probably the best known passage in the whole Bible, right up there with the Lord's Prayer in John 3:16. Many of us know already what Psalm 23 says. Has anybody committed that verse to memory by chance? I'm not going to call you out or anything, but just curious. Some of us have. And so many of us know what it says, but knowing what it says and knowing what it means and what it means for us are two entirely different things. God as a shepherd. It's a beautiful image. But as Andrew's question earlier, I think, illuminated for us, not many of us actually could put ourselves in the place of a shepherd to know what shepherds actually do. We could probably wing it through the first few minutes if you just try to imagine being a shepherd and you're just there with 100 little sheep following you around, and then things start to get a little awkward and you don't really know what to say and they start wandering off. So what do we actually do if we were a shepherd? Now, obviously, shepherds watch sheep, right? I think we can agree upon that definition, which is a fine definition. But if we stop there, that's kind of like describing God as the good accountant and saying that means God knows how to count. There is more to it. And I have several friends who are accountants. I have no idea what a day in the life of an accountant is actually like. So if we stop there with the Lord being our shepherd, we do an injustice to this passage. Yes, shepherds watch sheep, but there is more to the story than that. And for those of us who live in a city of 1.5 million people and probably 3 sheep, the image of God as a good shepherd is probably one that is lost on us. They say familiarity breeds contempt, but in this case, I think that the truth is our familiarity with Psalm 23 breeds regularity. And this is a passage that is anything but regular. That's why it is on our hearts and minds. As often as we have heard the words from 1 Corinthians, the love chapter, love is patient, love is kind. So often as we've heard that at weddings, we've probably heard those words heard the words of Psalm 23 just as often at funerals. The Lord is my shepherd. For as many times as we might have heard that passage as a funeral, we might begin to lose sight of the fact that more than a passage about the finality of death, this is a passage that is about, at its core, is about the twists and turns of life. That each and every one of us, no matter who you are, no matter where you're from, no matter how rich or poor, tall or short you are, every one of us, our lives, face those twists and turns. So for the next few weeks, we invite you along this journey that Psalm 23 describes. Maybe the journey that it mandates from us. And our hope is that you're willing to reinvent it. You're willing to read it with a fresh set of eyes. That you're willing to hear it with a fresh set of ears. And if you're like me, we hear this passage, this glorious declaration that the Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside still waters. He restores my soul. He leads me in right paths for His name's sake. And if you're like me, when you read this passage, that's the part that's familiar. And that's generally when we stop reading because we start getting these sidetracked daydreams of little sheep wandering around and of playing around in a green field and going to lay down by a lake somewhere. And the promise of green fields and blue skies leads us away from what the text actually goes on to say if we don't stop there. It leaves us with the falsely contrived promise that so long as we follow God, nothing bad will ever happen to us. And that is not what this passage says. But the sacred path that it does describe, it goes on to say more. It goes on to lead us through the darkest valley. As some translations say, through the valley of the shadow of death. It goes on to sit us at a table in the presence of enemies. That's not reassuring at all. It's a psalm that promises us, every one of us, that we will have troubles of our own. Missing your rent payment another time. Having your boss yell at you again. Missing a deadline at work or at school. Maybe it's the agony for some of us of Mother's Day, of an abusive parent or an absent child. What is the darkest valley that you've ever been in your life? Maybe you're in it right here tonight in this moment. Invite yourself into this psalm. The words of the psalmist who wrote it down. What must he or she have been going through when they wrote down these words? What speaks to you? What jumps off the page and says, that's me right now? Is it the green pastures? Is it the promise of, even if I'm going through a bunch of stuff right now, that somewhere else out there is green pastures and all I have to do is imagine that I'm there? Is it that, or maybe is it the idea that when we're in those dark valleys that we're not alone in them, that somebody else is there walking with us in that dark valley? What is it that speaks to you? I think wherever you are, it's important to just stop and be accepted where you are on that journey. Whether you think you're in the lowest of the valleys or the highest of the mountains, that's okay. That's what community is for, is to bring our authentic selves to this place, to worship before God and say, God, this is where I am tonight. Because as one of our presidents said, it's only when you've been in the agony of the deepest valley that you can experience the joy of the highest mountain. Those two things are linked. And in our deepest valleys of life, our pain is real. Our suffering is tangible. But look carefully. The psalmist doesn't say, even if I walk through the darkest valleys. It says, even when I walk through the darkest valley, because dark valleys that come are not a question of if. And when they come in their midst, nothing provides a better mental escape than green pasture somewhere else out there where we can go lie down, as if we're just out at camp at Bethany Hills on some Saturday afternoon resting by the lake. It's a beautiful escape. But notice too that as you read through the passages, that in each one of these situations of life that we walk through, God is present with us, is what the passage says. God is present with us as a mainstay, but does not change the situation for us as a magician. If God leads us beside restful waters, but we do not stop to rest there, what strength have we gained for the journey? The shepherd can lead a sheep to water, but he can't make it drink. If God makes us lie down in green pastures, how long do we sit there before we want to pop right back up and get busy again? If God restores our souls, how long do we sit in that before we let everyone else tear it apart again? See, God can lead us to still waters, but He will not make us swim. God can prepare the table, but will not make us eat. God can lead us to greener pastures, but does not fence us in. More and more, the more people I talk to, the more I am convinced that for most people, when we find out that the Good Shepherd doesn't lead us away from the valleys, but instead leads us right through them, we don't want to be the sheep anymore. We're fine following God as long as God's going to lead us to wherever we wanted to go on our own anyway. But do we really want to be led by God, even if it means that we still experience pain and suffering and setbacks in life? So as Ashley and Caroline stated last week, God does not intend, God does not will bad things to happen to us. That is not God's desire. So if you go through a valley and somebody tells you that's part of God's plan, Maybe we need to rethink that statement. God does not will bad things to happen, but when bad things happen to us, God's heart breaks right alongside our own. Our dog, Beasley, loves when I give him a treat. And I can hold out a milk bone, and he will follow that milk bone anywhere around the house that I take it. And he can't wait to see where it's going to go to stop there and get the milk bone. He can't wait until he realizes that I'm leading him into his room for the day to close the door and walk out of the house. And when I do that, he's going to chew the couch if I don't. But when I do that, the sad little puppy eyes that he gives me makes me question whether he thought it was worth it to take the treat that I tricked him into taking. That's not what happens in Psalm 23. It's not the nature of the God that's being described in this passage. It's not, here's a treat from God, I'll see you later. It's no matter how life treats you, I am there with you. I am right there alongside you. And that's what separates God as the Good Shepherd from all of the other things in life that want to lead us astray, that want to lead us in a million different directions. And there are a lot of shepherds out there that tell us a lot of different things. But what separates God as the Good Shepherd is this. Look at all of these pictures up here. These are shepherds from different parts of the country, even different parts of the world. What do you notice when you look at all of these people? They speak different languages, they look different, they're different genders, but they're all driving the sheep from behind. For those of you who live in a city of 1.5 million people, that's how shepherding works, apparently. The shepherd gets behind the sheep and pushes them on and pushes them on. That's why they have the staff, to keep them moving, keep them moving, keep them moving. But what separates God as the Good Shepherd is that God does not push us. God does not drive us and drive us and drive us until we run out of steam. God is the one out front. God leads us, is what the psalm says. God leads us. God is the one out in front. And what that means is there is nowhere in life that we can go that God has not already been. If we follow God everywhere that our life journey takes us, God is there with us. Life cannot reject us any more than life rejected Jesus Christ. When we look at the life of the one that we are to follow, life cannot reject us more fiercely, more urgently, more violently than they rejected the will of Jesus Christ. But in our rejection, however down and out we might feel, we do not walk that path alone. They say that the best of shepherds can recognize every single sheep in the flock. Every one of them. And this is how I know I would be a really bad shepherd, because I've only seen like 10 sheep in my life, and they all look the same. But they say that good shepherds can look out at the flock, no matter how big the flock is, and knows every single one of them by looking at their face. Can recognize them, can see them, can know what they need. Whether we feel like we are a lost sheep, or whether we feel like we are the black sheep of the church family, or whether we feel like we're just a sheep in the middle of a big old flock and nobody knows our name, God knows us by name. We are His. God loves each of us as if there's only one of us, because there is. And the Good Shepherd walks alongside us through the greenest pastures and through the darkest valleys. Wherever it is that journey takes us, we are not alone. Will you pray with me? Holy One, we know that you lead us, that sometimes as we are led to places we don't want to go, places we never dreamed of being. But Lord, No matter how high the mountains are or how deep the valleys are, we know that you are there walking right alongside us. You are the Good Shepherd, the one who tends to us, the one who knows us by name, who calls us out. Says, you are mine. You are my beloved with whom I am well pleased. Lord, help us to follow your path of goodness, kindness, of love and hope, that we may never give up.